All right, Chapter 19, Transport Operations. Now, this isn't a very long chapter, but it's fairly important because to be effective in your job, we've got to be able to do everything as well as doing the patient assessment, right? We've got to get ready for the call, which means our trucks have to be ready. We need to make sure our dispatch information is good, and then we know how to communicate with dispatch. We have to know how to respond safely to the scene, right? And then as we're rolling up on scene, do a scene size up before we even begin our BSI scene safe mechanism injury stuff. Then we have to go through our patient assessment. We have to update incoming units, and then there's things that we have to do afterwards because the call's not over until the truck's ready to go back in service, right? We have PCRs that we have to do. We've got truck checks and things like that. So there's quite a bit to being an EMR. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to go help somebody, then I'm going to go home, right? So one of the first things that we need to do is we need to look over our bags. Now this is just a suggested content, and in your books there is a list. There's one here in the next slide or two about what you should have in your bag. Just a recommendation. This is on table 19.1. It's in chapter 19. If you're going to be building a first aid bag or an EMR bag, this would be great. In fact, I'd actually add some stuff to that for us. I was looking at this list not too long ago, and it doesn't have any oxygen bottle on or BVMs. I am not one to want to put my lips on anybody, so I'm going to know how to use those things. But this is a good minimum expectation bag. There's a lot of trauma stuff here, but we just want to have a little smattering of everything just to make sure that we can help people effectively when the time comes. Now, when we talk about phases of a call, it's kind of the same all through them. But we need to know each of these phases whether we are the ones dealing with them directly or not. Like for instance, dispatch. That's a part of our phase, even though we may not only hear a portion of what goes on there. Right? We don't need to know everything they do. We just need to know that they're sending us out. The dispatch center is where the citizens can call in to request a 911 response, and typically those dispatchers uh, will gather most of the information that we need. Nature of the call, where are we going, how many patients, any special considerations, and so forth. So when we talk about phases, the first phase is dispatch, right? Something like that. Now, responding to the scene is another phase. We've got to get there, right? But we have to get there in a safe way, right? Due regard. You might hear this talked about in other things, in other places. We need to have due regard for what's going on as we're driving there, which means I'm not going to drive at 100 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone. Oh, well, you might say, well, I've got lights and sirens on. That's okay. Well, it's not okay. And, well, I can go through that red light because I have my lights and sirens on. No, you really can't. You're requesting yielding. You're requesting the other people to yield. Doesn't mean they have to. Actually, there's law that says they have to. But if you hit them, you're the one that's at fault. Or if they hit you, you're the one that's at fault. So there's been many people. I'm an acquaintance with a guy who was running code back to the station to get another vehicle, and he ran through a red light and killed someone. He went to jail for 15 years. You don't get just to go crazy out there. Due regard. I want you to remember that. Due regard. You need to drive with due regard for other people. What kind of traffic patterns are you going to have at that time of the day, right? Wouldn't think to drive through Chicago at 5 o'clock at night. That's just ridiculous. And yet, sometimes we do that. Always use seatbelts and safety mechanisms. Um, just well, I don't think seatbelts are good, and I don't agree with blah blah. It's a safety mechanism. It's proven time and time again to save lives. Keep all equipment secured. We don't want things bouncing around behind us because if you get into an accident, then anything that's unsecured will become a missile. All warning devices, you need to make sure you have your lights and siren going. There's no such thing as a lights only response. Either you're going lights and siren or you're not, right? Those are the two options, because the reality of it is lights and siren response might gain you 30 seconds. And if it's a one where you're like, I don't know if I need lights and siren, or I don't know if I need siren, you don't need the lights then either. And it says do not exceed a safe speed, right? Just because you have lights and siren on doesn't mean you go 95 miles an hour on icy roads, right? You could be very much charged with an accident or an injury if you're driving without due regard. All right, so now as we arrive on scene, that's another phase. So dispatch, we got the response to the scene. Now we have the arrival on scene. Where am I going to put my vehicle, right? I need to understand where the accident is, what I'm trying to accomplish, where the patient is. I'm not going to park right next to the accident scene, because to do that, I block off the ability to get in and out. I want to position my vehicle in a defensive way. I want to shield myself and my crew and the patient from additional possible slide-offs or whatever else. Vehicles can be replaced. People typically cannot, if they're out of service because they're dead, right? You might have to deploy some people that are going to do some traffic, but remember, your primary concern is that patient. We got to get down there to them, and we have to make sure our transport units have a place to come in. One of the things that we've been finding, at least in this area, is because we work on the paid on call status, or some are still volunteer, and that's cool, but everybody goes direct to scene, and so we got 25 personal vehicles on scene blocking it, so we don't have any way of getting our response vehicles in. Make sure that we're paying close attention to where we're putting our vehicles, because our number one reason for being there is to help that patient. Another phase is, so the fourth phase is transferring care to that transport unit. Because, we might, as EMRs, run on a basic truck with an EMT, but in all likelihood, we're just running out in a QR truck to get there, 10, 15 minutes before the ambulance does, so that we can render high quality care before they get there, right? So when they get there, or even as arriving on scene, driving to the scene, hey, give them a brief report. Hey, I'm on scene with a 2-car PI accident. We've got one pinned in, and we've got 3 total patients. We're probably going to need another unit, right? Then ask them, do you have anything for me? Is there anything you want to know? And then once that happens, whether it's via radio or face-to-face, assist until the patient is off scene. When the patient leaves the scene, when the scene is clear of all injured and ill patients, then you can start demobilizing, okay? And that's the final phase. That is where the post-run activities happen. This is where we complete all of the paperwork, your PCR, patient care record, or this is where you fill out your incident reports, and this is where you put your trucks back in service, and you clean these things, and you do all that kind of stuff, right? If I've got puke on me or I've contaminated, I'm going to use a germicide that the EPA has recommended to clean my trucks. And barring that, I'm going to use bleach 1 to 100, right? 1 part bleach to 100 parts of water. And in this way, I can disinfect all of my equipment and putting it back in service, so I'm ready for the next call. When all of that's done, then I can call myself back in service. Now, many of us will call us going, we're clear and available, which means we probably could take another call, but are you really ready? Have you completed everything else? So that's going to be policy driven about your department. When do you call back in service? I know that for our fire, we don't call back in service until we at least have 1 engine back in after a fire. We've got 1 engine reloaded and ready to take another. We don't necessarily wait till it's clean, but it's got to be reloaded at least. Some other things to consider are helicopters. Now, helicopters are an awesome device, a transport unit that can get to patients in places that maybe the ambulances can't get into, or even our rescues. We have now the overland vehicles, the OTVs that can get where we want to get most of the time, but I'm thinking about like beach rescues and so forth, where there's cliffs on the one side. We might have to call a helicopter in. Make sure you're following local protocols. But for us here, right here in Van Buren County, you call for air care, they launch. And they'll if they're not needed, they'll use it as a training flight. They're coming no matter what. And these are the patients that are going to be critically injured. They need a surgical or a higher level interventions, but it's not going to be for patients that are in active CPR. That that might possibly arrest during that time frame. There's no room to work in these things like that. Okay, so we we have to weigh that against. Well, it's going to take me 10 minutes to get them from where I needed to go to the ambulance, and then 10 minutes to the hospital. It's going to take them 15 minutes to get there, and then 10 minutes back. Even with the coolness of landing the helicopter, the net we have a net loss for the patient. So we have to weigh, do I need it versus time, right? So if we need a helicopter, we need to call them soon. And while we're doing that, we need to start setting up for the landing zone, right? Now we might talk about this a little bit later, but the bonuses here are we can put a helicopter just about anywhere. They can get into places that vehicles can't get through congestion and everything else. But we also have to remember that there has to be at least 100 by 100 landing zone for these little monsters to land in, right? They normally have that specialized equipment, and they carry nurses and doctors, nurses and paramedics for sure, and the doctors depending on the day. Now, we do have to realize that helicopters are limited by weather, even with the instrument landing systems, the ILS stuff that they have. They only have that in designated areas, and so not able to just go wherever they want to. And they don't have infrared visions and all that stuff. So if our EMS system uses a helicopter, and I can tell you that these areas do, we need to get with Air Care and Med Flight and Care Flight and all the area helicopter services, and what's your policy, right? And what can we do to be ready for you, right? How do I request? How do I orient myself to your personnel? Now, just a couple of notes of things here. Rotations per minute, 300 rotations per minute. And that is how fast those blades are spinning. They'll slice through you before you know you've been sliced through. And then the tail rotor spins 10 times as fast. So if you're not paying attention, you could die quickly. 60 to 80 mile an hour winds could just push you right off your feet. We see here that the landing zone of 100 by 100 is there, and you see a little bit of landing zone. This is actually looks like an established landing zone because they've got marker lights for ILS, but the rotors are completely stopped. If the rotors are spinning, they call that a hot load, and we don't typically do hot loads. I know MedFlight has a helicopter similar to this one, and they do hot loads. The Air Care does not. They do a complete shutdown. They don't have anything spinning for safety reasons. We just got to make sure that you know. And if you want to take a helicopter landing zone class, that would be giving you some more information about what to do. But typically speaking, the pilot likes to land with his nose into the wind and likes to take off with his nose into the wind. It just helps him to control the vehicle better. We're looking for obstructions, any wires, any tree limbs, anything that's going to cause the aircraft to have a bad day. Nothing loose on the ground if we can help it, because that'll just lift off. 60 to 80 mile an hour winds, generated by this, especially when they come into hover. So make sure that everything is secured down there, and make sure all the doors are closed to your vehicles and the patient's covered up, because it's going to kick up dirt and dust and snow and blah 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 blah. You can tell who's never watched or very very infrequently watch a helicopter land or take off because they're staring right at it. and then they get crap in their face. And you can see the people that have been there and done that because they always have their backs to the helicopter as it's landing and taking off. As soon as everything is done, the helicopter personnel are the ones that load the patient. You assist with getting them over there, but you are not the one that's going to actually be doing all of this work because you don't know how their aircraft runs. You will follow their instructions and their instructions alone because this is their craft. Well, this is my patient. Yeah, but it's their aircraft, and if there's an error with the aircraft, you could cripple it, and now we don't have our air medevac there. So follow the flight crew's instructions explicitly. And remember, those suckers are loud when they start up. Okay? I told you it was a short chapter. It's 15 minutes, and we're done with chapter 19. So just as a summary, as an EMR, you need proper equipment to take your call, to go out and do your thing. And it might include more than just your medical gear, right? The phases of an emergency call are preparation. I'm getting ready for it. I'm being dispatched to it. I'm responding to it. I get to the scene. I transfer the care to other EMS personnel, and then I have the post-run activities. And remember, if we are going to be working with a medical helicopter, we need to know their safety protocols. All right, that is chapter 19.